Well, I'm Travis, alcoholic.
Hi, Travis.
It's good to be here, and I feel totally comfortable. And, I guess I'll just start with my story from the beginning. I first was, I had a normal childhood, and my father was a career Marine officer, and uh, it was a normal childhood, and my parents weren't alcoholics. My dad, even though he was in the Marines for a quarter of a century, I never saw him drink. Maybe a beer once in a while. Never drunk. Neither one of my parents. And then, probably about 13 or 12, I took my first drink, and I knew right away, immediately, that I was an alcoholic. There wasn't with me. There wasn't uh, a lot of progression where it gets built up. It was right from the get go. I was in trouble with alcohol, uh, and a lot of it. I started off wrecking on bicycles and smashing myself up. And then as I got older, I went to motorcycles and cars. And by the grace of God and probably my mother doing an awful lot of praying, I escaped serious injury or death on many occasions. And I believe my mother's prayers had a lot to do with it. She has a lot of faith, and I think that's protected me. Um, I really do believe that. And so I ended up, I was in trouble with the law at a young age, and it was because of drinking and getting involved with uh, people, other kids that were doing stuff illegal, and taking cars that didn't belong to them, and getting caught for that. And I ended up in juvenile detention for quite some time because of that. Uh, and went to live with my grandparents briefly, and they were both recovering alcoholics. They'd been uh, sober for quite a few years. I don't ever remember them really drinking. Maybe when I was a real young kid, but they got pulled over coming home from a cocktail lounge one night, and my grandpa was drunk. But this was back in the days when the cop just said, "Well, uh, I'm going to follow you home, and make sure you get home. Don't be drinking and driving or whatever anymore." And that was enough for him. My grandfather, he said, I'm done." And they both became, started going to AA, the Hilltop group in Bellevue. And so I was living with them about 12 years old or 13. And that's when my first experience with AA was going to those meetings with them as a young kid. And I wasn't really participating in the meetings. I was, like I said, 12 or 13, maybe at the oldest. And these were people that were my age right now and older. So that I thought they were pretty old. And I felt really out of place. I felt, like a preschool kid out of college or something. It was the age difference. And so I didn't really absorb a whole lot of it there. And as the years went along, I got older and got into more trouble. And every single thing it was all alcohol. Every single run-in with the law uh, was all, there was alcohol involved every single time. And it took me many years to finally start figuring it out, that this, alcohol was causing me a lot of trouble in my life and the lives of people around me that cared about me. and and I, was getting. I'd have to go to AA because of the courts, or because I was trying to make my family happy and tell them, hey, I'm going to AA. But I wasn't really working the program. I was just showing up and going to 1 or 2 AA meetings a week, and then on the way home picking up a 6-pack of beer and going, okay, I got my meeting out of the way, and just not not really in it for myself anyway. I was in it for somebody else, and then and I got in a lot of car wrecks and a lot of DUIs. I worked up in Alaska right after high school. I wanted to go into the military like my dad, but I ended up uh, getting a DUI and busting my leg up real bad. And so that ended that. So I did the next most dangerous thing I could think of to do, and that was to go up to Alaska and go fishing. Uh, uh, I was up there first summer up there on a salmon tender, and I wasn't 21 yet, but they didn't know that at the bars in Haines, and I was drinking, and I missed my ride back to where our boat was moored. So, because I stayed and closed the bar down, and so I started walking back to the boat, bought a 6-pack of beer to go, and it was summertime, but at night it was cold, and I stopped and at this gas station out in the middle of nowhere, and there was a tow truck, and it was unlocked, so I got in it to warm up and drink a couple beers and smoke some weed and a cigarette, and then I saw the keys were in the ignition, so I was like, oh, awesome. I got a ride back. I got a way to get back to the boat. So I'm not going to be in trouble in the morning. One of the problems with that was I didn't know how to drive a stick shift yet. And so I put the tow truck in the ditch about 100 yards down the street. And I was drunk too. And the police showed up. They just happened to be driving by. And I got out and ran because I didn't want to get caught with the weed. And threw that in some bushes or something, and he had a dog, and I knew he wasn't lying because I could hear the dog barking, and I knew couldn't outrun the dog, so I just gave up. And bright and early the next, and he found the weed too. I don't know how. Because it was real dark, we're out in the woods and stuff, and I don't know, maybe the dog was a dope sniffing dog or something too, but he found it, and so I went in front of the judge the next morning, and I got real lucky. He was sympathetic, kind of. He was used to dealing with the fishermen and them getting drunk and rowdy and causing problems. And because of my age, the owner of the tow truck didn't want to press charges, so he let me off, and I didn't get the DUI either. He said, "Well, this is what we're going to do, Mr. Russell. I can't remember how much the fine was, $250 or something." He goes, "When can you pay it?" I said, "Right now." And he goes, "Okay, well, we're going to dismiss this and get you back to your boat before you get in too much trouble with your captain, and you just pay the clerk out in front." So somebody was there, and they gave me a ride to the other side of town where the boat was moored, and I was late. I was supposed to be on the boat in the morning when everybody got up, and so I still got in a lot of trouble. And if there would have been another deckhand available, I would have been out of a job. But he had to keep me on, so I got lucky, and then that was probably my first. Well, DUI. I didn't actually get a DUI, but technically it was a DUI. I was drinking and driving under the influence, and got back to Washington with a boatload of money, racked up another DUI, wrecked another car, and and my mom wanted to know where the car was. I said it broke down up in Everett, and it was really in the wrecking yard because it was totaled. And so I went and bought another one after she found out, and because I didn't have to hide it. So I was like, well, she knows now. I'll just buy another one. And then I moved out, and the money went real fast when you're drinking. At 19, I thought I was, $25,000. 19 years old is a recipe for disaster for most 19-year-olds. And I went through that money real fast, and it was probably 80% of it was drinking and some cocaine, but mostly drinking. And it went real fast, especially because I'm a generous guy when I'm drinking, and when I had a pocket full of $100 bills, I was buying lots of drinks for people too. And everybody liked it when I was showing up, and so the money was gone, and then ended up getting caught up with some other stuff, drinking, and the next thing I knew, I was on my way to the state penitentiary for uh, several years, and ended up out at McNeil Island when it was this was back in the early '80s, and they were still there were still a lot of federal prisoners there. And this McNeil Island, if everybody's seen pictures of what Alcatraz looks like in the inside, well, McNeil was the same thing. It was built around the same time, and it was the same thing. And it was it was a tough awakening for me. I mean, I had to really toughen up real quick, and and I made it through that all right, and ended up taking off. I got out, and the only people I knew, my friends that I grew up with, were either already in prison or they were doing stuff to get put in prison. And I was staying at a friend's house in Bellevue, and he had warrants for his arrest. I'd only been out for 2 or 3 days. I hadn't even checked in with my parole officer, and the cops were knocking at his door one morning, and uh, he hid downstairs somewhere, and I opened the window and was talking to him. They asked me my name, and I started to say Travis, and I stopped before I said my last name. I was like, man, I'm not supposed to even be hanging out with these guys. My parole officer will, have my ass. So I wouldn't tell him my last name, and he thought I was my buddy's younger brother who also had warrants. And uh, so uh, after that, I was like, I got to get out of here. And I had a place to stay and a job down in San Diego. And plan was I was going to get some money saved up first. But at this point, I was like, no, if I hang out here any longer with any of these guys, I'm going to be right back in trouble again, real quick. So I called my parents up and I said, I need to get out of town right now. And I have a job down in San Diego. I have friends down there, and uh, my future wife was down there, and I don't. She might not have known yet that I was going to marry her, but I did, and I knew it, and took off without reporting to my parole officer or anything. Went down there and was doing pretty good for a little while, but we lived in the Pacific Beach area, and I was, early 20s, and that was a bad that was another recipe for disaster down there. And before I knew it, I was, ended up and locked up for another year for drinking and driving my motorcycle and getting in a high-speed police chase. And before that happened, I'd already racked up 2 or 3 DUIs. And I would just throw the tickets away when I got out of jail, and I'd get pulled over again. And they wouldn't arrest me. But finally, it got to that last police chase, and they had enough of me. And there was a couple women from Mothers Against Drunk Drivers in the courtroom, and they were screaming for my head. They wanted the judge to give me at the maximum he could give me. And I can't remember what the maximum was, but I remember him saying, "You're getting a year, Mr. Russell." And so off I went again to some place out in the desert, and got out, and I talked 15 minutes already.
No?
Okay, well, yeah, I didn't think this through quite well.
Sounds
But
like you need to be here.
I'm happy to be here, and I feel honored to be here and speaking. Most all AA meetings I go to, I'm a little nervous about going to sometimes, showing up, but by the time I leave, I'm real glad I showed up. And on that, I'm out of words, and thank you.
Thanks,